Commander Zorath stood on the observation deck of his flagship and watched the stars with tired eyes. The war against the Keth Dominion had lasted 11 years now. 11 years of battles, retreats, and losses that grew heavier with each passing season. The Velthani Confederation was losing, and everyone knew it. His communicator chirped with an incoming message from High Command. Zorath read it twice, hoping he had made a mistake. He had not. Reinforcements were coming. Human reinforcements. Zorath felt his stomach turn cold. Humans were considered one of the youngest species in the galaxy. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 2 centuries ago. The Velthani had been sailing between stars for 12,000 years. Sending humans to fight the Keth was like sending children to wrestle with monsters. But High Command had made their decision. The humans had volunteered ships and crews for the war effort. The Velthani were in no position to refuse any help. Even help they did not want. 3 days later, Zorath stood in the docking bay as the human shuttle landed. The door opened, and a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes walked down the ramp. He wore a simple uniform with the rank insignia of a captain. Behind him came a young woman with red hair and a sharp expression. The man extended his hand in the human greeting custom. Zorath had studied their culture enough to know what this meant. He reached out and grasped the offered hand. "Commander Zorath," the human said. "I am Captain Daniel Harris, of the UFS Valor. This is my tactical officer, Lieutenant Katie Morgan. We are honored to serve alongside the Velthani fleet." Zorath studied the human carefully. Daniel Harris looked like a warrior. His eyes had the weight of someone who had seen battle before, but that did not change the basic problem. Human ships were small. Human weapons were adequate at best. Human shields could not match Velthani technology, and they certainly could not match the Keth. "Captain Harris," Zorath replied. "Welcome to the fleet. How many ships have you brought?" 12 combat vessels and 4 support ships, Daniel answered. "Not a large force, I know. But we are eager to prove our worth." Zorath tried to hide his disappointment. 16 ships. The Keth had fleets numbered in the hundreds. 16 human ships would barely register on their sensors. "I appreciate your willingness to serve," Zorath said carefully. "I will assign your fleet to convoy, escort, and supply line protection. These are vital roles that will allow us to focus our main forces on direct combat." Daniel's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Katie Morgan shifted slightly beside him. She looked like she wanted to speak, but held herself back. "Commander," Daniel said slowly, "we did not travel 30,000 light-years to guard supply convoys. We came to fight. I request that my fleet be integrated into your frontline combat formations." Zorath stared at the human in disbelief. "Captain, the front lines against the Keth are extremely dangerous. Your ships are not designed for that level of combat. I am trying to protect your people." Daniel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We do not need protection, Commander. We need a chance to show you what humans can do." The 2 officers looked at each other for a long moment. Zorath saw something in the human's face that he did not understand. It was not arrogance. It was not foolishness. It was something else entirely. "Very well," Zorath finally said. "I will place your fleet in the secondary assault line. But if the battle becomes too intense, you will withdraw. Those are my conditions." "Agreed," Daniel said. He extended his hand again, and Zorath shook it. Over the following days, the human ships integrated into the Velthani fleet. Zorath watched them carefully. The humans worked hard and followed orders without complaint. Their ships were clean and well-maintained. Their crews were disciplined and professional, but none of that changed what they were. A young species playing at war with powers far beyond their understanding. Katie Morgan spent her time studying the Velthani battle records. She sat in the fleet's tactical library for hours each day, reading through hundreds of engagements against the Keth. Zorath noticed her dedication but thought little of it. Let the young officer learn from history. Perhaps she would understand why her people should stay in the rear lines. On the 7th day, intelligence reports arrived. A Keth strike force was moving towards Sethar Prime, a Velthani colony world with 2 million civilians. The fleet would intercept them in 3 days. Zorath called a meeting of all commanders. The Velthani officers gathered in the war room, their blue-gray faces grim with determination. Daniel Harris stood among them, the only human in the room. The Keth force consists of 47 warships, Zorath explained, pointing to the tactical display. We have 62 ships, including our human allies. We have the advantage in numbers, but the Keth are fierce fighters. We will engage them at maximum range and wear them down gradually. Standard Velthani Doctrine. 44. The other Velthani commanders nodded in agreement. This was how they had always fought. Careful. Measured. Preserving their forces for the long war ahead. Commander, Daniel spoke up. May I make a suggestion? Zorath hesitated, then nodded. The Keth expect you to fight at range. They have adapted their tactics to counter exactly this approach. What if we did something unexpected? What if we hit them hard and fast at close range before they can adjust? Several Velthani officers laughed openly. One of them shook his head. Close-range combat against the Keth is suicide, human. Their boarding parties are savage. Their close-range weapons are devastating. Daniel looked at the officer calmly. My people have a saying. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is exactly what your enemy expects. Zorath raised a hand to silence the room. We will follow standard doctrine, Captain Harris. Your fleet will hold the secondary line and support our main assault. That is final. Daniel nodded once. He did not argue further. But as he left the war room, Katie Morgan fell into step beside him. They are not going to listen to us, she said quietly. Not yet, Daniel replied. But they will, after they see what we can do. Katie looked at her captain. The patterns I found in their battle records. The Keth have weaknesses they have never exploited. I could show them. Daniel shook his head. Save it. Words will not convince them. Only actions will. He stopped and turned to face her. When the battle comes, we do things our way. We show them what humans are made of. Katie nodded. Her heart was beating fast, but she felt no fear. Only the quiet excitement that came before every fight. In 3 days, the galaxy would learn why humanity should never be underestimated. The Keth fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of angry insects. 47 warships, their dark hulls bristling with weapons, arranged themselves in a tight formation as they moved toward Sethar Prime. Zorath stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the tactical display. His fleet was in position. The Velthani ships formed a perfect wall between the enemy and the colony world. The human ships held the secondary line behind them. All ships, begin firing at maximum range, Zorath ordered. The Velthani fleet opened fire. Bright beams of energy lanced across the void, striking Keth shields and armor. The enemy ships absorbed the blows and kept coming. They returned fire, and the battle began. For 20 minutes, the two fleets exchanged fire at long range. Ships on both sides took damage. Shields flickered and failed. Hull breaches vented atmosphere into space. Velthani crews fought with precision and discipline, exactly as they had been trained. Then Daniel Harris made his move. All human ships, break formation, he ordered over the fleet channel. Execute flanking maneuver, Delta 7. Zorath's head snapped toward the display. He watched in horror as the 12 human combat vessels broke away from the secondary line and accelerated directly toward the Keth formation. Captain Harris, what are you doing? Zorath demanded. Return to your position immediately. Daniel's voice came back calm and steady. Negative, Commander. We see an opening, and we are taking it. Trust us. The human ships dove toward the Keth flank at full speed. Their small size and surprising agility allowed them to slip through gaps in the enemy formation. They opened fire at close range, their weapons tearing into Keth ships that had not expected such an aggressive attack. The UFS Valor led the charge. Daniel stood on his bridge, gripping the railing as his ship shook from enemy fire. Explosions blossomed across the hull. Damage reports flooded in from every section, but he did not order a retreat. "Target their engines," he commanded. "Cripple them and move to the next target." Katie Morgan worked the tactical console with furious concentration. She identified weak points in Keth ships and fed targeting data to the weapons crews. Her analysis of the battle records was paying off now. She knew exactly where to hit them. The Keth were confused. No species fought like this. Every other race in the galaxy followed the same basic principles. Engage at range. Minimize losses. Preserve your forces. The humans were doing the opposite. They were throwing themselves into the heart of the enemy formation with no regard for their own survival. Zorath watched the battle unfold with growing disbelief. 3 human ships were badly damaged. 1 was on fire, venting plasma from a dozen wounds. But they kept fighting. They refused to pull back. Then he saw something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. A Keth destroyer broke through the main line. It was heading directly for a civilian transport carrying 3,000 Velthani refugees from the colony. The transport had no weapons and no shields. It was helpless. A single human interceptor moved to block its path. The small ship was already damaged. Its weapons were nearly depleted. But it positioned itself directly in front of the destroyer. "This is Ensign Ryan Cole," a young voice said over the open channel. "I am moving to intercept the enemy vessel." "Ensign Cole, pull back," Katie ordered. "Your ship cannot stop a destroyer." "No, ma'am," Ryan replied. "But I can slow it down." The interceptor accelerated toward the Keth destroyer. Ryan fired every weapon he had left, scoring hits on the enemy's forward shields. The destroyer fired back, and the interceptor's shields collapsed instantly. Hull plates were torn away. The cockpit began to lose pressure. Ryan did not turn away. He aimed his dying ship directly at the destroyer's engine array and pushed his throttle to maximum. The interceptor struck the destroyer at full speed. The explosion was massive. The destroyer's engines failed, and the ship tumbled out of control. It would never reach the transport. Ryan Cole was 23 years old. He had been in space for less than 2 years. And he had just given his life to save 3,000 people he had never met. The Velthani fleet fell silent. Even the Keth seemed to pause for a moment. Then Daniel Harris spoke over the fleet channel. "All ships, press the attack. Make his sacrifice mean something." The human ships surged forward with renewed fury. The Velthani, inspired by what they had witnessed, pushed harder than they had in years. The combined assault overwhelmed the Keth formation. Enemy ships began to fall back, then to flee. Within an hour, the battle was over. The Keth strike force was destroyed or scattered. Sethar Prime was saved. Zorath ordered his shuttle to fly to the UFS Valor. The human flagship was badly damaged. Scorch marks covered its hull. Entire sections were open to space. But it was still functioning. Still fighting. Daniel met him in the damaged docking bay. The human captain had a cut on his forehead that was still bleeding. His uniform was torn and stained with smoke. "Commander," Daniel said with a tired nod. "Captain Harris." Zorath struggled to find words. "What I saw today. I do not understand it. Your ships were damaged. Your people were dying. Why did you not withdraw?" Daniel looked at him for a long moment. "Because we do not fight to survive. Commander, we fight to win. There is a difference. Your ensign, the one who destroyed the destroyer, he knew he would die. Yes, and he did it anyway. For people he did not know. For people who are not even his species." Daniel nodded slowly. "That is what we do. When we choose to fight alongside someone, we fight for them completely. We do not hold back. We do not calculate acceptable losses. We give everything we have." Zorath felt something shift inside him. He had fought wars for 200 years. He had seen courage and sacrifice before, but he had never seen anything like this. "I owe you an apology," Zorath said quietly. Daniel placed a hand on the Velthani commander's shoulder. "We are young, And compared to your technology, we are weak. But we have something that makes up for that. What? We are not afraid to die for what we believe in. And that makes us very dangerous. Zorath returned to his own ship in silence. He sat in his quarters and stared at the wall for a long time. He thought about Ryan Cole, the young human who had thrown his life away for strangers. He thought about the way the human ships had charged into certain death without hesitation. Word of the battle would spread across the fleet. Other commanders would hear about what had happened at Sethar Prime. They would speak of the humans with a mixture of admiration and fear, because Zorath understood now. Fighting alongside humans was an honor. But it was also a warning. These creatures did not know when to stop. They did not know when to give up. And that made them the most terrifying allies the galaxy had ever seen. Korath Station floated in the darkness of space, like a metal city. It was old, built by the Velthani over 1,000 years ago. Its position controlled access to 12 star systems. If the Keth captured it, the entire sector would fall. The enemy knew this. They had assembled an assault fleet of 180 warships, the largest Keth force ever gathered in a single place. The coalition fleet defending the station numbered only 60 ships. Zorath stood in the war room with his officers and the human commanders. The tactical display showed the approaching enemy fleet as a wall of red markers that stretched across the screen. "We are outnumbered 3-1, Zorath said heavily. Velthani doctrine is clear. When facing such odds, we execute a fighting retreat. We preserve our forces for future battles. The Velthani officers nodded in agreement. This was the way they had always fought. Lose the battle today so you can win the war tomorrow. Daniel Harris stepped forward. Commander, I have a different suggestion. Zorath looked at him. In the weeks since Sethar Prime, his opinion of the human captain had changed completely. Daniel had proven himself time and again. His tactical instincts were sharp, his courage was beyond question. But what he was about to suggest might be madness. Speak, Zorath said. We make them pay for every kilometer. Daniel said. We do not retreat. We hold this station until they break. One of the Velthani officers laughed bitterly. Against 3-1 odds? We would be slaughtered. Maybe, Daniel admitted. But Katie has found something. Show them. Katie Morgan stepped forward and activated a new display. It showed the Keth command structure. Their flagship was marked at the center of the formation. The Keth are not like us, Katie explained. They rely heavily on their central command. Every order comes from the flagship. If we destroy it, their fleet will lose coordination. Their attack will fall apart. Zorath studied the display. The flagship is surrounded by 100 warships. Reaching it is impossible. 80. Not impossible, Daniel said. Difficult, costly, but not impossible. He pointed to a narrow corridor through the enemy formation. The human fleet will punch through here. You hold the line and keep the bulk of their force occupied. We get to the flagship and destroy it. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what Daniel was proposing. He was volunteering his people for a suicide mission. You have 18 ships, Zorath said quietly. Even if you reach the flagship, you will be surrounded. Cut off, there will be no retreat. Daniel nodded. We know. You would sacrifice your entire fleet for this station? We would sacrifice our fleet to give you a chance to win, Daniel replied. That is what allies do. Zorath looked around the room at his officers. He saw doubt in their faces. Fear. But also something else. Hope. The humans were offering them hope. Very well, Zorath said at last. We will do this together. The battle began 6 hours later. The Keth fleet advanced on Korath Station like a tidal wave. Their weapons lit up the darkness of space. The Velthani fleet met them head-on, forming a defensive wall around the station. Zorath commanded from his bridge, directing his ships with the skill of 2 centuries of experience. The Velthani fought well. They held their lines, but the Keth kept coming, wave after wave, wearing them down. Then Daniel gave the order. The 18 human ships broke from the formation and drove directly into the heart of the enemy fleet. Lieutenant Commander Scott Palmer led the assault squadron. His ship, the UFS Thunder, was the first to enter the kill zone. The Keth reacted with surprise and then fury. They poured fire into the human ships. Shields failed. Hulls cracked open. Crew members died at their stations. But the humans did not stop. "Keep pushing," Daniel ordered over the channel. "We are almost there." The UFS Valor shook violently as a Keth torpedo struck her starboard side. Fires broke out on 3 decks. The medical bay was destroyed. 40 crew members were killed in an instant. Daniel felt the deck tilt beneath his feet but kept his balance. "Damage report," he said calmly. "Shields at 12%. Engines at 60%. Weapons still functional. Then we keep fighting." Scott Palmer's ship reached the flagship first. He opened fire at point-blank range, his weapons carving deep wounds into the massive Keth vessel. Enemy fighters swarmed his ship, tearing it apart piece by piece. "I am going to ram them," Scott reported, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "It has been an honor, sir." "The honor is mine, Scott." The UFS Thunder drove itself into the flagship's bridge section. The explosion was blinding. The Keth flagship shuddered. Its command center was destroyed. But it was not enough. The flagship was still functioning. Daniel made a decision. He ordered the Valor forward. 3 other human ships followed him. They surrounded the wounded flagship and unleashed everything they had. Katie worked the weapons console with tears streaming down her face. Around her, friends she had known for years were dying. The ship was falling apart, but she kept firing. The flagship finally broke. Its reactor went critical. The explosion consumed the ship and everything around it. 4 human vessels were caught in the blast. They were vaporized instantly, but it was done. The Keth fleet received no more orders from their command. Ships began acting independently, without coordination. The Velthani, sensing the confusion, pressed their advantage. What had been an overwhelming assault became a disorganized mess. Within 2 hours, the Keth were retreating. They fled the system, leaving their dead behind. Korath Station still stood. Zoreth surveyed the aftermath from his damaged bridge. Of the 60 coalition ships that had started the battle, 23 remained. Of the 18 human ships that had charged the flagship, only 7 had survived. He found Daniel Harris floating in an escape pod. The Valor had been destroyed in the final assault. Daniel had been blown clear when the bridge decompressed. He was badly wounded but alive. Zorath personally carried him to the medical bay. "You did it," Zorath said as the doctors worked on Daniel's injuries. "You saved the station." Daniel managed a weak smile. "We did it together. That is the point. Your losses were terrible." "Yes." Daniel's eyes were filled with pain, but not regret. They knew what they were doing. They chose this. Every single one of them. Zorath sat beside the bed for a long time. He thought about what he had witnessed. Humans dying by the dozens to save a station that was not even theirs. Fighting against impossible odds because they believed it was the right thing to do. He had served in the Velthani military for 200 years. He had never seen anything like it. Word of Korath Station spread across the galaxy. The story of the human charge became legend. Species that had never heard of Earth before now spoke of humanity with reverence and fear. The tide of the war was beginning to turn, and at the center of that change were the strange, reckless, magnificent creatures from a small blue world called Earth. The news of Korath Station traveled faster than light. Every species in the coalition heard the story. Humans had charged into certain death and won. They had sacrificed themselves for allies they had barely known. They had turned an impossible battle into a victory. Daniel Harris recovered slowly in the medical bay of Korath Station. His wounds were severe. The doctors said he was lucky to be alive. Daniel did not feel lucky. He felt the weight of every life lost under his command. But there was no time for grief. The war continued, and the galaxy was watching. 2 weeks after the battle, Daniel received a promotion. He was now Commodore Harris, commander of the growing human expeditionary force. Earth was sending more ships, more soldiers, more humans who wanted to prove themselves among the stars. Katie Morgan received her own promotion. Captain Morgan now commanded the UFS Resolution, one of the newest ships in the human fleet. She had earned that command with blood and sacrifice. Other species began requesting human reinforcements. The Torvani Collective sent a formal message to Earth's government. They were facing a Keth offensive in their home sector and wanted human ships fighting alongside them. The Selthi Concordat made a similar request. So did the Corvan Assembly. So did a dozen other species that had once looked down on humanity as primitive newcomers. Daniel met with Zorath in the commander's quarters. The two officers had become close friends in the months since they first met. They had fought together, bled together, and mourned their dead together. That kind of bond was stronger than any treaty. "The requests keep coming," Daniel said, looking at a stack of diplomatic messages. "Everyone wants humans in their fleet now." Zorath nodded slowly. "You have become a symbol. Before Korath, you were an unknown species from a backwater world. Now, you are legends. We are just soldiers. We do what needs to be done." Zorath smiled in the Velthani way. A slight tilt of his head. "That is what makes you different. You do not see yourselves as special. You simply act. And your actions speak louder than any words." He paused and looked at his human friend carefully. "I must confess something to you, Daniel. When you first arrived, I thought your people were primitives playing at war. I expected you to die quickly and quietly. I know, I was a fool. You taught me something important. For 12,000 years, my people have fought with calculation and caution. We preserve our forces. We retreat when the odds are against us. We think in terms of centuries." Zorath shook his head. "But you, humans, you think in terms of moments. You see the battle in front of you, and you throw everything into it. You do not hold back." Daniel leaned forward. "And that scares you?" "Yes," Zorath admitted. "It terrifies me. Because I have seen what happens when humans decide something is worth dying for. Nothing can stop them. Not numbers. Not technology. Not fear. When humans commit to a fight, they will burn themselves to ash to win it." The two officers sat in silence for a moment. "The Keth have noticed too," Zorath continued. "Their commanders have issued new tactical directives specifically addressing human vessels. Some of them avoid battles where humans are present. Others target your ships with overwhelming force, trying to destroy you before you can act." "Let them try," Daniel said quietly. Katie Morgan was learning the same lessons on a different scale. She had begun training mixed crews of humans and aliens. Her ship, the Resolution, carried soldiers from 5 different species. They needed to learn how to fight together. But more than tactics, she was teaching them the human way of war. "It is not about being reckless," she explained to her officers. "It is about being committed. When you enter a battle, you do not think about retreat. You do not calculate your losses. You think about winning. You think about protecting the people beside you." A young Velthani officer raised his hand. "But what if the odds are impossible? What if victory is not achievable?" "Ah," Katie smiled. "Then you make the enemy pay such a terrible price that they learn to fear you. You make them understand that fighting you is never worth the cost. Even if you lose, you win." The Velthani looked confused. "That does not make logical sense." "No," Katie agreed. "It does not. But it works." Across the galaxy, the Keth High Command was meeting in their fortress world. The Dominion had ruled this region of space for 3,000 years. They had conquered dozens of species. They had never faced a serious challenge to their power. Until now, the humans were changing everything. Their numbers were small. Their technology was inferior. But they fought like demons. They inspired other species to fight harder. The coalition, which had been on the verge of collapse a year ago, was now pushing back. "We must end the human threat," the Keth Supreme Commander declared. "Their presence in this war has shifted the balance against us." "How?" one of his generals asked. They are spread across many fleets. We cannot hunt them all. The Supreme Commander pulled up a star chart. At the edge of known space, a small yellow star glowed. Orbiting it was a blue and green world. We do not need to hunt them, he said. We destroy their homeworld. We destroy Earth. Without their home, without their families, the humans will lose their will to fight. The Keth generals studied the map. Earth was far from the front lines. Reaching it would require their largest fleet to travel through dangerous territory. The losses would be significant, but if they succeeded, the war would be over. Assemble the Armada, the Supreme Commander ordered. 2,000 ships, the largest fleet in Keth history. We will burn their world to ash and end this war forever. The orders went out. Ships began gathering from across the Dominion. The Armada would take 3 months to assemble. Then, they would strike at the heart of humanity. On the other side of the galaxy, Daniel and Katie knew nothing of the danger approaching their home. They continued fighting, winning battles, building alliances. The humans were becoming the center of the coalition. Every species wanted them as allies. Zorath watched his human friends with growing admiration and growing concern. He had seen what they could do. He had seen their courage and their fury. But he also knew that the Keth would not accept defeat quietly. Something was coming. He could feel it in his bones. The war was entering a new phase, and humanity would be tested like never before. The warning came from a stealthy spy network deep inside Keth territory. 2,000 warships were moving toward Earth, the largest fleet ever assembled by any species in galactic history. When Daniel received the message, he felt his blood turn to ice. Earth had a defense fleet, but nothing that could stop an armada of that size. His homeworld was going to burn. We have to go back, Katie said, her voice shaking. We have to warn them. There is no time, Daniel replied. The Keth will arrive before we can even get halfway there. The news spread through the coalition like wildfire. Earth was under threat. The humans, who had given so much for so many, were about to lose everything. Zorath found Daniel standing alone on the observation deck of Korath Station. The human Commodore was staring at the stars, his face empty of emotion. We are coming with you, Zorath said. Daniel turned to look at him. What? The Velthani Grand Fleet. Every ship we have. We are coming to defend Earth. Quote, Zorath, that would leave your own worlds undefended. The Keth could strike anywhere. Let them, Zorath replied. We have fought alongside humans for over a year. We have seen what you do for your allies. Did you think we would abandon you when you needed help? Within hours, messages began arriving from across the galaxy. The Torvani were sending their reserve fleet. The Selthi were committing every combat ship they had. The Korvan Assembly, who had never joined a foreign war in their history, announced they would fight for Earth. Species that had never met a human volunteered ships. Governments that owed humanity nothing pledged their support. The message was the same from all of them. You fought for us, now we fight for you. The combined fleet gathered at a staging point 3 days from Earth. When Daniel saw the assembled armada, he could not speak. Over 800 warships from 23 different species. Humans, Velthani, Torvani, Selthi, and a dozen others, all flying together. This is what you built, Zorath said, standing beside him. Not with politics or treaties. With blood and sacrifice. You taught the galaxy what it means to have humanity as an ally. And the galaxy responded. Daniel took command of the combined fleet aboard the UFS, Relentless, the newest and most powerful ship Earth had ever built. Katie commanded the assault force that would target the Keth command ships. Around them, the greatest alliance in galactic history prepared for war. They arrived at Earth's outer system to find the Keth Armada already waiting. 2,000 ships arranged in a wall of death that stretched across the void. Behind the human fleet, the blue and green sphere of Earth hung in the darkness. 7 billion people. Countless generations of history and culture and dreams. The Keth Supreme Commander opened a communication channel. His image appeared on every screen in both fleets. "Surrender," he said simply. "We will destroy your world regardless. But if you surrender now, we will allow your fleet to leave. Your species can survive as refugees among the stars." Daniel stepped forward to respond. His voice was calm and steady. "I am Commodore Daniel Harris of the United Fleet of Earth. I speak for humanity and for our allies. We will not surrender. We will not retreat. If you want our world, you will have to take it from us. And I promise you this: whatever happens today, you will regret coming here." He cut the channel before the Keth could respond. "All ships," Daniel ordered, "attack." The Battle of Earth began with the fury of 1,000 suns. The two fleets crashed together in a storm of weapons fire and exploding ships. The Keth had numbers on their side. The coalition had desperation and rage. Ships died by the dozens every minute. The void filled with debris and bodies and screaming metal. Katie led her assault force through the chaos toward the Keth command cluster. Her ship took hit after hit, but she kept pushing forward. Beside her, Velthani and Torvani pilots flew wing to wing with humans, fighting as one. Zorath commanded the defensive line in front of Earth itself. His ships held the gap while the assault force did its work. When one of his vessels was destroyed, another moved to fill the hole. The line bent but did not break. The battle raged for 6 hours. 6 hours of constant fighting, constant dying, constant refusing to give up. Then Katie reached the Keth flagship. Her ship was crippled by that point. Engines failing, weapons depleted, crew reduced to half. But she had one torpedo left. One chance. "For Earth," she said quietly. "For everyone who believed in us." She fired. The torpedo struck the Keth flagship's reactor core. The explosion was massive, consuming the flagship and everything around it. Katie's ship was caught in the blast. She was thrown from her chair as the hull tore apart around her. When she woke up, she was floating in an escape pod. The battle was over. The Keth fleet was retreating, broken and defeated. Their supreme commander was dead. Their armada was shattered. Earth still hung in the sky, beautiful and whole. Daniel found her 2 hours later. He looked like he had aged 10 years in a single day. His uniform was torn and stained, but he was smiling. "We won," he said. "I noticed." Katie managed a weak laugh. "How bad were our losses?" "Bad. Very bad." Daniel's smile faded. "But we are still here. Earth is still here. And the Keth will never threaten us again." The aftermath of the battle was a mixture of grief and celebration. The coalition had won its greatest victory, but the cost had been terrible. Over 400 ships were destroyed. Millions of lives were lost. Every species in the Alliance had paid a price, but they had paid it together. Zorath attended the memorial service on Earth. He stood among humans and aliens, listening to the names of the fallen being read aloud. He thought about everything that had happened since that first day when Daniel Harris had arrived at his fleet. He had learned so much from these humans. About courage, about sacrifice, about what it truly meant to fight for something beyond yourself. When the service ended, he found Daniel and Katie standing at the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. "What happens now?" Zorath asked. Daniel looked at him. "We rebuild, we heal, and we make sure this never happens again. The Keth Dominion is broken, but the galaxy is a big place. There will be other threats, and humanity will face them?" "Humanity and its allies," Daniel corrected. "We do not fight alone anymore. None of us do." Zorath nodded slowly. He looked out at the ocean, at this beautiful blue world that had produced such remarkable creatures. "I once thought humans were primitives," he said. "Young, weak, foolish." He turned to face his friends. "I was so wrong. You are the strongest species I have ever known. Not because of your weapons or your ships, but because of your hearts. When you decide something matters, nothing can stop you." He placed his hand on Daniel's shoulder. "To fight alongside humanity is the greatest honor in the galaxy. and the Keth learned the other side of that truth. To fight against humanity is to face fear itself. Daniel smiled. We are just people, Zorath. We get scared. We make mistakes. We are not special. That is what makes you special, Zorath replied. You are afraid. And you fight anyway. You know you might die. And you charge forward regardless. The galaxy has never seen anything like you. He paused and looked at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. And now, everyone knows your name. From here to the edge of the universe, they will tell stories about the humans, the young species that taught the galaxy what courage truly means. Katie looked up at those same stars. Somewhere out there, new adventures waited. New challenges. New opportunities to prove what humanity could do. We are just getting started, she said quietly, and the galaxy was watching.